I pulled out the cash from my savings jar and counted it one final time before tucking the bills into my worn backpack. The apartment lease I'd found online sat folded in my pocket, already signed on my end. My parents' voices drifted up from downstairs, Dad laughing at something on television, Mum discussing dinner plans on the phone with her sister. They still didn't remember. 2 weeks had passed since my university entrance exams. 2 weeks since I'd walked out of that examination hall with trembling hands and a splitting headache, knowing I'd given everything I had to those brutal 8-hour tests. 2 weeks, and neither of them had asked me a single question about it. The morning of the exam had been the turning point. I'd come downstairs at 5:30 in the morning, dressed in my lucky blue shirt, my admission ticket clutched in my sweaty palm. Dad had been making coffee, and I'd said, clear as anything, "I'm heading to the examination centre now." He'd glanced up from his phone. "Have a good day, honey." That was it. No good luck, no acknowledgement that this was the most important day of my academic life thus far. Mum had still been asleep, and when I'd knocked on her bedroom door, she'd mumbled something about it being too early and rolled over. I'd taken the bus alone to the testing centre, surrounded by other students whose parents had driven them, whose families waited outside with thermoses of tea and encouraging smiles. I'd sat through 8 hours of examination, my hand cramping, my brain fog thickening as question after question swam before my eyes, and when I'd finally stumbled out at 6 in the evening, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, I'd come home to find them arguing about whether to order Chinese food or pizza for dinner. "How was school?" Mum had asked absently when I walked in. School. As if I was still in high school, as if I hadn't graduated months ago, as if today hadn't been the culmination of 3 years of preparation. That night, lying in bed, something inside me had cracked. Not broken, cracked. Like ice giving way to spring thaw, something cold and solid in my chest had fractured, and underneath it I'd found clarity. I died that night, in a way. The old Sienna, the one who kept making excuses for them, who told herself they were just busy, just distracted, just stressed with their own problems. She stopped existing. And when I woke up the next morning, I was someone new, someone who saw the situation with brutal, unflinching honesty. My parents didn't care about my life, not in any way that mattered. The realization hadn't come with tears or drama. It had been quiet, factual, like finally admitting that 2 + 2 = 4 after years of insisting it might be 5. They loved me in the abstract way people love concepts. They'd keep me fed and housed because that's what parents do. But my dreams, my struggles, my achievements, those were invisible to them. So I'd started planning my exit. Now, standing in my childhood bedroom with 3 boxes of belongings packed and ready, I felt nothing but calm determination. The results weren't due for another 2 weeks. But I wasn't waiting. Whether I'd passed or failed, whether I'd gotten into my dream program or would need to try again next year, none of that changed what I needed to do. I needed to leave. The apartment was small, a studio on the east side of the city, 40 minutes from campus by bus. The landlord, Mrs. Liu, had been surprised when I'd shown up alone to view the place, a 19-year-old girl with cash in hand and no co-signer. But I'd been working part-time at the campus bookstore for 2 years, saving every cent I could. I had enough for 3 months' rent and deposit. After that, I'd figure it out. I carried the first box downstairs. Mum was in the kitchen, now chopping vegetables. She looked up when I passed. "Spring cleaning?" she asked. "Something like that," I said, and walked out to the beat-up sedan I'd bought with my savings last year, another purchase they'd barely noticed. It took 4 trips to load everything: clothes, books, my laptop, the small television from my room, bedding, toiletries. I packed my life into boxes and bags, and carried it piece by piece past my parents, who occasionally glanced up but never asked where I was going with all my belongings. On the final trip, Dad was sitting in the living room when I came downstairs with my backpack and purse. "Heading out?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm moving out." He blinked at me, remote control still in his hand. "What?" "I'm moving into my own apartment. I've already signed the lease and loaded my things into the car." Mum appeared in the kitchen doorway, knife still in her hand. "Sienna, what are you talking about? You can't just move out." "I'm 19 years old and I have a job. Yes, I can." But why?" She looked genuinely confused, which would have been funny if it weren't so sad. "Because I need to," I said simply. "I left my new address on the counter. You can reach me by phone if you need to." "This is ridiculous," Dad said, standing up. "If this is about us forgetting some school thing, you're being overdramatic. Sit down and let's talk about this like adults." "Some school thing?" "No," I said. "I'm leaving now. Goodbye." I walked out before either of them could respond, got into my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing in the doorway, looking bewildered. Mum was still holding the knife. The drive to my new apartment felt surreal. Every stoplight, every turn, I kept expecting to feel something. Regret, fear, guilt. But there was only that same crystalline clarity, that sense of rightness settling into my bones. This was what I should have done months ago. The studio apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse building. Mrs. Liu met me at the entrance and helped me carry boxes up the narrow stairs. She was a woman, in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that I appreciated. "Your parents know you're doing this?" she asked as we hefted my mattress up the final flight. "They do now," I said. She gave me a long look, then nodded. "Good for you. Too many young people stay in bad situations because they think family obligation means suffering in silence. Here, this is your key. Building door locks at 10 p.m. and trash pickup is Tuesday and Friday mornings. There's a community board in the lobby if you need recommendations for services, plumber, electrician, that sort of thing." After she left, I stood in the centre of my new home and turned in a slow circle. 400 square feet of possibility. The walls were bare white, the wooden floors scuffed but clean. A tiny kitchenette occupied one corner, and the bathroom was barely large enough to turn around in, but it was mine. All mine. I spent the rest of the evening unpacking, setting up my few pieces of furniture, a futon I'd bought on sale, a small desk and chair, a bookshelf I'd owned since I was 12. By midnight, the space looked almost cozy. I'd hung string lights across the ceiling and arranged my books by colour, creating a rainbow gradient across the shelves. My laptop sat open on the desk, my notebook stacked beside it. I made instant ramen on the 2-burner stove and ate it sitting cross-legged on my futon, watching the city lights through my single window. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed. Mum had sent 7 text messages, each one more frantic than the last. "Sienna, come home right now. This is unacceptable behaviour. Your father is very upset. We need to discuss this as a family. You can't just run away from your responsibilities. If you don't come back tonight, don't expect us to pay for anything. Fine, have it your way. But when you fail and come crawling back, don't expect us to welcome you with open arms." I read through them once, then put my phone on silent and set it face down on the desk. In the morning, I'd send them a single message confirming I was safe. That was all they deserved. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine building. I worked my shifts at the bookstore, attended my part-time tutoring sessions, and slowly transformed the studio into a real home. I bought a small plant for the windowsill, a succulent that supposedly couldn't be killed. I found a thrift store 2 blocks away and picked up a proper pot and pan, a few plates and bowls, mismatched but functional. I learned to cook simple meals, to budget my grocery money, to fix the bathroom faucet when it started dripping. Each small victory felt monumental. The first time I successfully made scrambled eggs without burning them, I actually laughed out loud. The first time I balanced my budget spreadsheet and realised I had enough for both rent and groceries with money left over, I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost scared me. Mrs. Liu checked in once, bringing me a casserole and asking if I was settling in all right. I told her yes, and meant it. She lingered in the doorway, looking around at my little nest. My daughter moved out when she was your age, she said. Also had problems with her parents. She's a doctor now, living in California. We talk every week. She paused, then added, sometimes distance is what saves the relationship, gives everyone room to breathe and grow. I thought about that after she left, sitting at my desk and working on my tutoring lesson plans. Was that what I wanted? To save my relationship with my parents? Or was I done entirely? I didn't have an answer yet. Maybe I didn't need one. I didn't speak to my parents. They called a few times in the first week, but I let it go to voicemail. The messages ranged from angry to pleading to passive-aggressive. I deleted them without listening all the way through. My younger brother Dylan texted me once. Mum says, you ran away? What's going on? I replied, I moved out. I'm fine. We'll talk soon. He sent back a thumbs up emoji, and that was that. Dylan was 16 and too absorbed in his own teenage drama to care much about mine. I didn't blame him. When I was 16, I'd been the same way, oblivious to anything that didn't directly affect me. The exam results were scheduled to be released on a Wednesday at 9 a.m. I'd set up email alerts months ago, so the notification would come straight to my phone the moment the results portal went live. Tuesday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my futon, staring at the ceiling, running through every question I could remember from the exam. Had I really understood that calculus problem? Had I structured my essay correctly? The chemistry section had been brutal. What if I'd misread the periodic table? The what-ifs spiraled in my head, each one more catastrophic than the last. What if I'd failed? What if I'd have to take the exam again next year? What if moving out had been a huge mistake, and I'd be stuck working retail forever with no degree and no prospects? At 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and made tea, sitting at my desk and watching the darkness fade into grey dawn. The string lights cast warm pools of illumination across my notes and textbooks, all the preparation that had brought me to this point. 3 years of late nights and early mornings, of practice problems and study groups, of sacrificing social events and sleep to chase this dream. At 8:30, I pulled up the results portal on my laptop and logged in with my candidate number, my hands surprisingly steady. The page showed a countdown timer, 30 minutes until results release. My phone rang. Mum. I stared at it for a long moment, then answered, Sienna, finally! Her voice was sharp with relief and irritation. You've been ignoring us for 2 weeks. Your father and I have been worried sick. I sent you a message saying I was safe, I said calmly. What do you need? We're your parents. We need you to stop this childish tantrum and come home. I'm not coming home. I have my own apartment now. Was there something specific you wanted? I could hear her taking deep breaths, trying to control her temper. Your brother has a soccer game this Saturday. We expect you to be there. I have work on Saturday. Sienna, family comes first. I'll try to make it if I can get the shift covered, I interrupted. Is that all? There was a long silence. Then, in a different tone, smaller, Are you really not coming back? No, Mum, I'm not. Did we do something wrong? The question hung in the air between us. I thought about explaining, about telling her that yes, they'd done something wrong, they'd forgotten the most important exam of my life, and that had just been the final straw in years of benign neglect. But what was the point? Either she genuinely didn't understand, in which case explaining wouldn't help, or she did understand and was hoping to hear that it wasn't their fault. It doesn't matter anymore, I said. I need to go. I'll talk to you later. I hung up before she could respond. The countdown timer hit 0. I refreshed the page, my heart hammering in my chest. Loading, then the screen changed and there they were. My results. Mathematics, 89%. Physics, 92%. Chemistry, 87%. English, 94%. General knowledge, 91%. Overall score, 90.6%. Below that, in bold, congratulations. You have been accepted into the Bachelor of Engineering program at Metropolitan University. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. Accepted. I'd done it, despite the stress, despite taking that exam alone with no support, despite my hand cramping and my brain fogging. I'd done it. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, slightly hysterical. I'd scored in the top 10th percentile. The scholarship information was there too. I qualified for a partial merit scholarship that would cover 60% of my tuition for the first year, renewable if I maintained a GPA above 3.5. I could afford this. I could actually afford university. I took a screenshot of the results page and sat back in my chair, letting the reality sink in. For a few minutes, I just breathed, letting the relief and joy wash over me in waves. Then, methodically, I began making a list of everything I needed to do. Accept the admission offer, apply for the scholarship, register for classes, sort out student loans for the remaining tuition, buy textbooks. My phone buzzed, a text from my high school friend, Jasmine. Results are out. How did you do? I replied, got into Metro U with 90.6% engineering program. Her response came in seconds. Sienna! OMG, congratulations! Your parents must be so proud. I looked at that message for a long time, then typed, thanks. Coffee soon? Yes. Tomorrow I want to hear everything. I smiled and confirmed the time. Jasmine was one of the few people who knew what I'd been going through, who'd listened to me vent about my parents countless times over the past few years. She'd be genuinely happy for me, without qualifications or conditions. Around 11 a.m. there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find my parents standing in the hallway, Dad holding a bouquet of flowers, Mum with a bakery box. Congratulations, sweetheart, Mum said, her smile bright and strained. We saw the results online. We're so proud of you. I didn't move from the doorway. How did you know my candidate number to check? They glanced at each other. It was on the paperwork in your room, Dad said. We just wanted to see how you did. You went through my room, I said flatly. After I moved out, you went through my room. Sienna, don't be like that. We're trying to celebrate with you. Mum held out the bakery box. I got your favourite, chocolate croissants. I took the box but didn't invite them in. Thank you for the thought, but I have a lot to do today. I need to finalise my enrolment and registration. We can help with that, Dad said quickly. We can drive you to campus, help you sort out the paperwork. I can handle it. Sienna. Mum's voice cracked slightly. Please, can we come in and talk? 5 minutes. I looked at them, really looked at them. Dad, with his hopeful expression and expensive flowers. Mum with her designer purse and bakery treats, both of them dressed like they were going somewhere nice afterward. They'd put on a show of caring now that the results were in, now that there was something concrete to celebrate. Where had they been 2 weeks ago? Where had they been the morning of my exam when I'd needed them most? 5 minutes, I said and stepped aside. They came in, looking around the small space with poorly concealed surprise. I could see Mum cataloguing everything, the thrift store furniture, the cheap string lights, the fact that I was clearly making do with very little. This is cosy, she said, in the tone people use when they mean the opposite. It's home, I said. What did you want to talk about? Dad set the flowers on my desk. There was nowhere else to put them. "We want to apologize," he said. "Your mother and we've been thinking about what you said when you left, about us forgetting your exam." "You didn't forget my exam," I corrected. "You forgot that it mattered. You forgot that I've been preparing for 3 years. You forgot that I told you, multiple times, exactly when it was and how important it was to me." Mum's eyes welled with tears. "We're sorry, honey. We've been so stressed with work, and your father's been dealing with that issue with his business partner, and I've been helping Aunt Margaret with her divorce." "Mum!" I held up a hand. "I understand that you have problems. Everyone has problems. But I needed you for one day. One single day in my entire life, I needed you to be present for me, and you couldn't do it." "That's not fair," Dad said, his voice hardening. "We've given you everything, a roof over your head, food, clothes, everything you've ever needed. Except attention. Except care. Except the sense that you actually know who I am or what I want out of life." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Mum dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Dad stared at his shoes. "What do you want from us?" he finally asked. It was a good question. What did I want? For them to magically become different people? For them to suddenly understand all the ways they'd failed me over the years? For them to acknowledge that I'd raised myself more or less while they focused on their jobs and their friends and their hobbies? "Nothing," I said, and realised it was true. "I don't want anything from you anymore. I'm taking care of myself now." "So that's it?" Mum's tears had stopped, replaced by anger. "You're just going to cut us out of your life? After everything we've done for you?" "I'm not cutting you out. You can call me, text me, visit if you want. But I'm not going to pretend that everything is fine between us. And I'm not going to move back home. And I'm not going to act grateful for the bare minimum of parenting." Dad's face flushed red. "You ungrateful, we don't have to pay for your university, you know. You can take out loans like everyone else." "I already am taking out loans," I said calmly. "I got a partial scholarship, but I'll need loans for the rest. I've already applied for them." That deflated him. Mum looked confused. "But we were going to help with tuition." "Were you? When did you decide that? Before or after you checked my results without my permission?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I think you should go now," I said. "Thank you for the flowers and the croissants. I appreciate the gesture." They left without another word, and I closed the door behind them, leaning my forehead against the cool wood. My hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline, probably. But underneath the tremor, there was steel. I'd said what needed to be said, and I'd meant every word. The chocolate croissants were actually really good. I ate one sitting at my desk, refreshing the university portal and beginning the enrollment process. There were forms to fill out, documents to submit, dates to remember. I made a spreadsheet. I loved spreadsheets and began organising everything into a timeline. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. I worked, I prepared for university, I built my little nest. Jasmine came over for coffee, sitting cross-legged on my futon and marvelling at my independence. "I can't believe you just left," she said, shaking her head. "I wish I had your courage." "It wasn't courage," I told her. "It was necessity. There's a difference." Still, most people would have stayed, would have tried to fix things. "You can't fix people who don't think they're broken," I said. "And I wasn't going to spend my life trying." Jasmine nodded slowly. "My parents keep asking about you. They want to know if you're okay. I think my mum wants to adopt you." I laughed. Jasmine's parents had always been warm and welcoming, the kind of family that gathered around the dinner table every night and actually talked to each other. Tell them I'm doing great and that I appreciate them asking. Dylan visited once. looking awkward and out of place in my small apartment. He was taller than I remembered, growing into the gangly limbs of adolescence. He brought a pizza with him, half pepperoni, half vegetarian, because he remembered I'd stopped eating meat the previous year. "Mom cries about you," he said, poking at the succulent on my windowsill. Dad pretends he doesn't care, but he's been really quiet lately. "How are you doing?" I asked, handing him a slice. He shrugged. "Same as always. School, soccer, video games. It's weird without you at home, though. Quieter." "You can visit whenever you want," I said. "I mean it, and if you ever need anything, someone to talk to, help with homework, whatever, I'm here." He nodded, then looked at me with a directness that reminded me he was growing up too. "Did they really forget your exam?" "Yeah." "That sucks." "Yeah," I agreed. "It did. I get it, you know. Why you left?" He took a bite of pizza, chewed thoughtfully. "They don't really see us. They see, the idea of us. The kids they think we should be." I was surprised by his insight. "When did you get so wise?" He grinned. "I've always been wise. You just never noticed because you were too busy studying." We spent the afternoon playing video games on my laptop, and when he left, he hugged me tight. "Don't be a stranger, okay? Even if you're mad at them, don't forget about me." "Never," I promised. A month after moving out, I started university orientation. The campus was huge and overwhelming, full of students who all seemed to know where they were going and what they were doing. I felt small and out of place, clutching my orientation packet and trying to memorize the map. But I'd survived moving out, I'd survived the exam, I'd survived my parents' disappointment and disapproval. I could survive this too. During the orientation icebreaker, I met a girl named Catherine, who was also starting in the engineering program. She had bright red hair and an infectious laugh, and within 10 minutes of talking, we discovered we both loved mystery novels and terrible reality TV. "Want to grab lunch after this?" she asked, and I said yes. That's how I built my new life, one yes at a time. Yes to new friendships, yes to study groups, yes to campus clubs and late-night pizza and struggling through problem sets together in the library. Yes to tutoring jobs that paid better than the bookstore. Yes to a better apartment with an actual bedroom when Catherine needed a roommate 6 months later. Yes to opportunities I'd never imagined. The first semester was brutal. Engineering courses were no joke, and I spent most of my time buried in textbooks and problem sets. But there was something deeply satisfying about it. The challenge, the difficulty, the way concepts slowly clicked into place after hours of struggle. Catherine became my closest friend. She was from a small town 3 hours away, and her parents called her every Sunday like clockwork to check in. The first time I overheard one of those conversations, I felt a pang of something. Not quite jealousy, but a wistful recognition of what I didn't have. "Your parents sound nice," I said after she hung up. She nodded. "They're great. Overbearing sometimes, but they mean well." She paused, then asked gently, "You don't talk to your parents much, do you?" "Not really." "Want to talk about it?" So I told her the whole story, the forgotten exam, the years of neglect, the decision to leave. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she just reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "That's really hard. But for what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave, and I'm glad you're here." That simple validation meant more than I could express. My parents and I maintained a careful distance. We texted occasionally, superficial conversations about the weather and holidays. I went home for Christmas, but stayed in a hotel nearby rather than sleeping in my old room. I came for Christmas dinner, brought gifts, made small talk, and left after a few hours. Mum tried to get me to stay longer. "It's Christmas, Sienna. Can't you spend the night? Your room is still there." "I have work early tomorrow," I lied. "But this was nice. Thank you for dinner." Dad barely spoke to me the whole time. Dylan filled the silence with stories about his soccer team, his classes, his new girlfriend. I was grateful for his chatter, for the way it covered up the awkwardness between me and our parents. The second semester, I joined a research lab working on sustainable building materials. The professor, Dr. Rodriguez, was brilliant and demanding, and I loved every minute of it. We tested concrete mixtures with recycled materials, ran stress calculations, analysed failure points. It was tedious, meticulous work, but I found it fascinating. "You have a good intuition for this," Dr. Rodriguez told me after I'd identified a flaw in one of our test designs. "Have you thought about graduate school?" I hadn't, but the seed was planted. Summer came, and I stayed in the city, working full-time as a research assistant. Catherine went home to visit her family, and I spent my evenings in the lab or in our apartment, reading papers and teaching myself advanced modelling software. Dylan came to visit for a week. He was 17 now, taller than Dad, filling out with muscle from all his soccer training. We explored the city together, museums, restaurants, the botanical gardens. It was good to see him, to reconnect away from the weight of our family dynamics. "Are you ever going to forgive them?" he asked one night as we walked along the river. "I don't know," I said honestly. Maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe it's just about moving forward. "That's very zen of you," I laughed. "I'm trying this new thing where I don't let anger consume my life." "How's that working out?" "Pretty well, actually." Second year was easier. I knew my way around campus, knew which professors were good and which to avoid, knew how to balance work and study and something resembling a social life. Catherine and I hosted study group sessions in our apartment, and our place became a hub for our engineering cohort. I made more friends, people who shared my interests, my drive, my slightly nerdy sense of humour. We built bridges out of popsicle sticks, stayed up until 3 a.m. arguing about the merits of different structural systems, celebrated when someone aced an exam or landed an internship. This was the life I'd wanted, the life I'd been working toward. My parents and I found a rhythm of minimal contact that worked for everyone. They sent birthday cards, I sent thank you texts. We had dinner together a few times a year. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile either. It was functional. Mum tried harder than Dad. She asked about my classes, remembered details I'd mentioned in previous conversations. Dad still seemed vaguely disappointed in me, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Maybe because I'd rejected their vision of what my life should be. Maybe because I'd proven I didn't need them. Third year, I applied for the study abroad programme and spent a semester in Germany, learning about European building codes and sustainable urban design. It was transformative, living in a new country, navigating a new language, seeing how different cultures approach the same engineering problems. I came back with renewed energy and a clearer sense of what I wanted to do with my degree. I wanted to design infrastructure that would last, that would adapt to climate change, that would serve communities for generations. Dr. Rodriguez encouraged me to apply for graduate programs. "You're one of my best students, Sienna. You should be thinking about a master's degree, maybe even a PhD." Fourth year was a whirlwind of applications, interviews, final projects, and graduation preparations. Catherine and I both got accepted into strong master's programs. She was going to California, I was staying at Metro U to work with Dr. Rodriguez. At graduation, my whole family came. Mum, Dad, Dylan, and even my grandmother, who I hadn't seen in years. They cheered when my name was called, and afterward, Mum hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." I hugged her back and said, "Thank you." It wasn't everything. It wasn't a magical healing of all wounds. But it was something. After the ceremony, we went to dinner at a nice restaurant. Dad asked about my research for the first time. Really asked, wanting details about what I was working on. I explained my project on carbon-neutral concrete, and he listened, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. "That's impressive work," he said when I finished. "You've accomplished a lot." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Dylan was graduating high school the following week, preparing to start his own university journey. He'd chosen a school 6 hours away, in another state, and I suspected he was making the same calculation I had: distance from our parents, space to become himself. "Good luck out there," I told him as we said goodbye that night. "Call me if you need anything." "I will. And Sienna, thanks for showing me it was possible. To leave, to build your own life." That night, alone in my apartment, I thought about the girl who'd packed those boxes 3 years ago. She'd been so certain, so cold in her clarity. She'd walked away without looking back, driven by hurt and disappointment, and the desperate need to save herself. I didn't regret what she'd done. That departure had saved me, had given me the space to become who I was meant to be. But I was glad that the woman I'd become had room for nuance, for second chances, for the possibility of reconciliation without requiring perfection. Years later, after I'd graduated with my master's degree with honours and landed a job at a prestigious engineering firm, Mum asked me over coffee why I'd really left. We were sitting in a cafe near my office, and she looked older than I remembered, grey, streaking through her hair, lines around her eyes. She'd been quieter lately, more thoughtful. Dylan had left for college 2 years prior, and I suspected the empty nest had given her time to reflect. "You said it was about the exam," she said, stirring her latte. "But it was more than that, wasn't it?" I considered how to answer. I could let her off easy, give her a gentle version that would hurt less. But we'd been dancing around this for years, and I was tired of protecting her from the truth. "It was about a lifetime of being invisible," I said. The exam was just the moment I finally admitted it to myself. She flinched, but nodded. "I think I always knew I wasn't a good mother. I just didn't know how to be better." "You could have tried," I said, not unkindly. "You could have asked." "Would you have told me?" I thought about that. Would I have? The old Sienna, before her rebirth, probably not. She'd been too busy making excuses, too busy convincing herself that things were fine. "Maybe not," I admitted. "But you could have noticed. You could have seen that I needed you, even when I didn't say it out loud." Mum was quiet for a long time, watching the steam rise from her cup. "Can we try again?" she finally asked. "Can we start over?" "We can't start over," I said gently, "but we can start from here, if you're willing to actually show up this time." "I am," she said, and reached across the table to take my hand. "I want to know who you are, Sienna, the real you. Will you tell me?" So I did. I told her about my job, about the bridge design project I was working on, about Catherine and our monthly video calls, even though she was in California now. I told her about my plans to get my PhD, about the research I wanted to do on sustainable infrastructure, about my dream of teaching someday. And she listened, really listened, asking questions and taking notes on a napkin like she was afraid she'd forget. It wasn't a magical healing. There was no tearful reconciliation montage, no moment where everything suddenly became okay, but it was a beginning, tentative and fragile. We started having coffee once a month. Sometimes Dad came too, though those conversations were still stilted and awkward. But with Mum, something was shifting. She was trying, genuinely trying, and I found myself willing to meet her halfway. When I left that cafe after our first real conversation, walking back to my office in the late afternoon sun, I thought about the girl I'd been, the one who'd packed her boxes and left without looking back. She'd been so certain, so cold in her clarity. I didn't regret what she'd done. That departure had saved me, had given me the space to become who I was meant to be. But I was glad that the woman I'd become had room for second chances, for careful rebuilding, for hope. My phone buzzed. Catherine, sharing a meme about engineering disasters. I laughed and sent back an equally ridiculous one. That night, I met up with my research group from graduate school. Most of us were working in the city now, and we still got together monthly to catch up and complain about our projects. We gathered in a crowded restaurant, arguing good-naturedly about load calculations and material stress and whether structural engineering or mechanical engineering was superior. Surrounded by friends, by people who knew me and valued me, I felt that same sense of rightness I'd experienced the day I moved into my studio apartment. I'd built a life I actually wanted to live. I'd built it alone, yes, but I didn't have to live it alone. That was the gift the old Sienna had given me. The foundation. Everything else I'd constructed on top of it, piece by piece, choice by choice. My phone lit up with a text from Mum. "Thank you for today. I love you." I smiled and typed back, "Love you too. Let's do this again next month." "Yes," she replied immediately. "I'll be there." And I believed her. Not because she'd suddenly become a different person, but because I'd become someone who knew how to set boundaries, how to protect myself, how to walk away when I needed to, and how to give people a chance when they'd earned it. The old Sienna had died on the night of her exam, when the illusion finally shattered. But the new Sienna, the one who'd emerged from that chrysalis of realization, had learned to fly. That was what rebirth meant. Not becoming someone else, but becoming more fully yourself. Shedding the parts that no longer served you, the excuses, the denial, the desperate need for approval, and walking forward into the life you deserved. I looked around the table at my friends, listened to their laughter and arguments and dreams, and knew that this was exactly where I was meant to be. Not because anyone had put me here, but because I'd chosen it, and that made all the difference.